He's the president and founder of NDN, a left-leaning think tank, also former Clinton campaign advisor, and Mark Thiessen, who's a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Your reaction to that report that we just went through, Mark?
Well, it's shocking. And the fact is, look, we've been hearing for months now that Susan Rice just went out and read the intelligence assessment, the objective intelligence assessment that was provided to her. Well, first of all, we know that this intelligence assessment did not include a mention of an internet video. She inserted that herself. But two, we know that there was a huge fight within the administration over what should be said in those talking points, and it was the State Department that was actively watering down these talking points. It was Toria Nuland who went out and asked for the removal of the reference to Ansar al-Sharia, and it was Toria Nuland who asked for the removal of the reference to the fact that they had been warned repeatedly about the threats in Benghazi because she didn't want members of Congress to beat them up. And I find it incredible that they were saying. I'll give you her reason for it was because why do we want the Hill to be fingering Ansar al-Sharia when we aren't doing that ourselves until we have the investigation results? So they were not willing to blame al-Qaeda, who they knew and believed was behind the attack, until there was a completed investigation. But they were willing to blame an internet video and a demonstration that never happened without any evidence whatsoever. What are the difference between these two things? Al-Qaeda attack is embarrassing for the president and for the administration because he just completed a convention where he said that Al-Qaeda was on the run, but an internet video is not embarrassing for them. So this was clearly a CYA operation, and that's what we're seeing out of these emails.
Simon, if she had just come out and said what the memo said, that we believe these attacks were spontaneously inspired by the protests at U.S. Embassy in Cairo, which were in part linked based on a video. But I want to contextualize that for you, because the CIA has told us, they had warned us, that there had been 5 other attacks, that the Benghazi compound had been under surveillance, that Ansar al-Sharia, an al-Qaeda-linked group, was on the rise and had been making threats, and that the CIA station chief reported real time that this was a terrorist attack. We wouldn't have had any of these problems.
Well, I don't think that we have learned anything new in the last couple of weeks. I mean, what we've known all along, I'm answering your question, Megan, right?
Did you know that the State Department was heavily involved in editing the talking points?
Megan, I'm going to answer your question, right, which is that we know that there were terrible mistakes made on the ground in Libya that allowed this tragic event to happen, and we know that for several weeks afterwards, the administration was confused about what happened.
No, they weren't.
And so,
no, they weren't. We don't know that.
Megan, I think that all the back and forth that you've seen in these emails make it clear that there was not consensus about what had happened, and that consensus really arrived 4 or 5 days later after the Susan Rice testimony when everything kind of settled down.
Okay, but you're dodging my question about did the State Department was so heavily involved in editing these talking points, which Jay Carney directly told us did not happen.
I don't think it's surprising. I mean, I think that there's, as I said on this show literally 10 other times in the last several months, there was tremendous confusion, bureaucratic confusion, in the aftermath of this tragic event. It took about 2 weeks for it to get cleared up.
I have to tell you, it is surprising. I may be naive, but it's surprising to me because Jay Carney said this on November 28, 2012. Listen.
Okay.
What the White House and State Department have made clear that the single adjustment that was made to those talking points by either of these two institutions were changing the word consulate to diplomatic facility because consulate was inaccurate. Those talking points originated from the intelligence community. They reflected the IC's best assessments of what they thought had happened.
Maybe I'm just naive because I was still believing Jay Carney until I saw all this evidence, Mark.
Well, Simon's just said that he's been on the show 10 times saying that there was confusion. He's actually been on the show 10 times saying that Susan Rice just read what the intelligence community told her. And that's not true.
Never said that.
The State Department was heavily involved in editing these talking points in a CYA operation. It was the State Department that removed the reference to the fact that they had been warned repeatedly that Al-Qaeda had carried out attacks and that the threat was rising. It was the State Department that took out the reference to Ansar al-Sharia, which would have put the whole thing in context. So the State Department was actively editing these comments. And the fact is, these talking points were so bad. The emails we don't have, Megyn, that I really want to see are the ones that describe where Hillary Clinton turns down the chance to go on the Sunday shows, and David Petraeus turns down the chance to go on the Sunday shows. We know that Petraeus said these talking points are useless. He wouldn't say them. So why did Susan Rice, who Obama said had nothing to do with Benghazi, come out and become the administration spokesman? Was she the Mikey of administration spokesman who would just say anything? Because it's clear nobody to go out and deliver these talking points.
Simon, did Jay Carney mislead us, or didn't he?
Certainly appears today that what Jay Carney said in November, I guess it was not 100% accurate.
And then again in May. And then again in May.
Okay. And so, but I want to say one thing about Ansel al-Sharia, because you brought it up several times, Megyn, is that General Petraeus in his testimony in front of Congress said that he wanted the reference to Ansel al-Sharia out of those talking points because he was concerned about tipping our hand and letting those guys know that we were going to come after them, right? And that he actively sought to remove the reference to Ansel al-Sharia. You can go look at the testimony. It's public testimony. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that I don't think anything has materially changed, right? In this, we know there's been confusion.
I think you undermine your argument. You undermine your argument when you gloss over.
I don't think anybody was misleading anybody in this.
You just admitted Jay Carney was. You're telling me Jay Carney was being truthful in that statement? He made a mistake twice in November and again in May?
Megyn, there have been mistakes made in this, Megyn. There have clearly been mistakes made.
It is not a mistake to say that it was only stylistic changes and only one word was changed. That's not a mistake when we now know that the White House was the one meeting on this issue. Can we have some honesty? Wouldn't it be so great? I got to go. Thank you, guys. Up next.